good afternoon. I know you've had a long day ahead of you, networking, talking about all things agriculture, but I'm Ryan Quarles. I had the honor to serve as your Commissioner of Agriculture, and it's been an honor of a lifetime because my family has a lot of history with what you see in front of you right now. My family's been farming in central Kentucky since the 1780s. I'm the 9th generation of my family to be involved in production agriculture in some way or form since then, and my upbringing was not unlike many other Quarleses before me. I grew up on a family farm, tobacco and cattle operation, and grew up in 4-H, grew up in FFA. I often tell this joke, but one of the first jobs I had on our farm was shoveling cow manure, and that prepared me for politics in Kentucky because it can get knee-deep sometimes. But when my father was in college at University of Kentucky, this is where he worked. He worked the graveyard shift at Bluegrass Stockyards in its downtown location. And so when it burnt to the ground back in January of 2016, it was kind of personal to me. But what a story to tell, to see a company that has rebuilt itself and has made quite an impression. You are sitting in the largest livestock facility east of the Mississippi River. The cattle that go through, not just cattle, but other livestock that go through here each week literally set the prices for the East Coast. And this is something we take a lot of pride in. But one thing that happened that I would consider one of the biggest issues in agriculture occurred when this place burnt down. We had to explain to the public, explain to the consumers, like Laura does on a regular basis, about where their food comes from. People do not know the basics about agriculture anymore. A recent survey was released with the Washington Post front page story earlier this year that revealed the startling results that 16 million Americans honestly think that chocolate milk comes from brown cows and the white milk comes from white cows. The same survey showed that 40% of American school children don't know that cheese is a dairy product, and they don't know that beef is actually hamburger, isn't a hamburger. And so when we started having the discussions with the political leadership here in Lexington, statewide in Frankfort, about moving the stockyards out of downtown Lexington and bringing it out here, we had to start at a very basic level, and I'll just give you one example. This facility is just like a grand bazaar. You buy and you sell here, as simple as that. I remember having a meeting in Frankfort, an hour-long meeting with some very high-ranking government officials, that after an hour of talking about what the Bluegrass Stockyards does, they asked the question, well, how many head are slaughtered there every day? Well, 0. This isn't a slaughter facility. It's not a processor. You just buy and sell, and people still had that misperception. And for us in the ag world, it's so hard for us to have an intelligent conversation about legitimate issues in agriculture, such as GMO versus non-GMO, organic versus traditional, when the average consumer doesn't know the difference between a soybean and a green bean. It's very hard for us to do that. And so if you were to ask me what the 2 biggest issues in Kentucky agriculture are today, number 1 is inconsistent farm income. We're always trying to provide better ways for stability in the market so that farmers can plan their income. And I'll just give you an example of that. This year has been one of the best production years in Kentucky's history. Definitely the best in the past decade. Some of the biggest yields with corn and soybeans. Things are really robust, but the prices are contracted right now. And there's this phrase in agriculture that in farming, you can grow your way out of prosperity by growing too much. And that's something that we're always trying to struggle with in agriculture. Number 2, the second biggest issue is ag literacy, the lack of farm knowledge from a consumer that increasingly does not know where their food comes from. And a lot of times these consumers are they're basing their preferences and their knowledge of agriculture off of a tweet or Facebook post, sometimes by anti-agriculture groups. We've identified about 40 active anti-agriculture groups that are operating right now that have their own political agendas, which are fine, but they're using food as a scare tactic, and they're misinforming people. And it's important for us to realize that everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but you need to be working off the same set of facts. And at the end of the day, the consumers will win. There's a lot of production practices that are changing because consumers are demanding that. And all you have to do is walk down on a early Saturday morning or a lazy Tuesday afternoon to a local farmer's market in Kentucky, meet that farmer face to face, a farmer who is increasingly female in our state, and you get to learn about where your food comes from and put your face behind that. And that's why it's so important for us in agriculture, where we represent 1% of the population, but we feed the rest of Kentucky, we feed the rest of America, and increasingly we feed the rest of the world out of the United States. It's so important for us to be unified. And so the Kentucky Department of Agriculture, we go out of our way to keep agriculture a nonpartisan issue. It is very, very, very rare you see a Republican ag idea versus a Democratic ag idea. I challenge you to come to Frankfort, as I know many of you all have, and sit in front of the House or Senate Ag Committee and watch testimony on a bill, and you cannot tell who the Democrats and Republicans are. We want to keep it that way because we're already outnumbered, and it's important for us to stay unified. And even in big ag states, I was with an Alabama state senator on Wednesday in D.C. Even a state like Alabama, where agriculture is their #1 economy, they only have one farmer in their state senate. And you're starting to see that across the United States. And a lot of the policies that are driving agriculture are being done at the state level increasingly instead of Congress. And so it's so important for us to continue to have people like you who go out of their way to learn a little bit more and become unified and become educated when it comes to learning more about agriculture. We've done some things at the Department of Ag over the past 2 years, which I think you all should be aware of. We're placing a big emphasis on international trade. A lot of people don't realize this, but Kentucky agriculture is already dependent upon international markets. And when you have a big production year like we have in 2017, and yet we have low commodity prices, if you want to raise that price, you need to grow your markets. You want to have more people buying. Just no different than here. The more buyers you have in this crowd, chances are the higher the price. And that's what we want. We want to have more markets in these seats when it comes to buying Kentucky agriculture. And I'll give you a few examples. Half the soybeans that we grow in this state end up overseas. 1/4 of our corn ends up overseas. 80% of the tobacco that we still grow, which is, by the way, is still a $350 million industry for our state, ends up overseas. And so it's important for us to connect Kentucky agriculture to the global market. We can't survive without it, but more importantly, the rest of the world is increasingly wanting Kentucky agriculture products. Because when I travel, Kentucky's already known. We have a good story to tell. They know us because of our bourbon. They know us because of our racehorses. And they know us because they know who Colonel Sanders is. And I know it's funny, but Colonel Sanders is perhaps the most famous ambassador Kentucky's ever had internationally. And guess what all three of those things are? Horses, bourbon, KFC. It's all agriculture. That's what defines us. And so I was happy just 5 weeks ago to travel to Beijing on short notice to open up the horse industry for Kentucky. And as we speak, we have 30 Kentucky Proud yearlings on their way to China right now. And we're hoping that this small trade agreement and market access opening can help open the door for other agricultural products that originate from Kentucky as well. We're exploring sending high-protein soybeans to Pacific Rim countries right now, particularly Taiwan, where they'll pay a premium for food-grade soybeans with high protein content. We're looking at leveraging Kentucky's logistics, our reputation as logistics states, to help connect high-valued products internationally as well. I mean, who here has been to the ham breakfast at the Kentucky State Fair? A lot of you. Some of you haven't. They auction off a ham for charity, a ham that sometimes sells for $1 million. At one time, it sold for $2 million for a Kentucky ham. And with UPS in Louisville, DHL here, and now Amazon locating on my grandfather's farm in northern Kentucky at the Northern Kentucky Airport, we can literally send a Kentucky ham, country ham, to any world market overnight. And so we're trying to connect Kentucky Proud with international markets as well. And that's an initiative that we have at the Kentucky Department of Agriculture. Of course, you can't talk about the KDA without talking about Kentucky Proud, our state's most successful marketing program in our state's history. It started with Commissioner Billy Ray Smith. Richie Farmer brought it up. Commissioner Comer raised the elevation, and now we're really trying to leverage a very popular marketing program to not only get it into more grocery stores, but also brand it in appropriate ways. And some of the discussions we're having right now directly benefit the beef industry. We're trying to debut a Kentucky Proud beef product in Kroger next year, early next year. where we can have a 1 pound ground beef product into their grocery stores. And it's my opinion that if you place a 1 pound package of ground beef of unknown origin next to one that has a Kentucky Proud sticker on it, the Kentuckians are going to buy the Kentucky Proud one, and they might even pay a premium for it. So that's just one example. We sell over $500 million worth of Kentucky Proud branded merchandise each year, and that's something that other states are envious of. And when you have a product, when you have an ID of the Kentucky Proud logo that 80% of Kentuckians can correctly identify and associate with a local farmer, local agribusiness, we need to leverage that and expand it and try to get the most use out of it. We're also having conversations at the Department of Agriculture, which I know you all will be interested in. I know you all spend a lot of your time talking about land management in central Kentucky, growth areas. I'm from Georgetown. We farm between the subdivisions, and we'd like to keep some of that green space there. We actually farm on the other side of the railroad tracks here in northern Fayette County as well. We need to have a conversation about how land is transferred as well. The average age of a farmer in Kentucky is 62 years old. 62. Name another occupation where the average age is almost the retirement age, besides the United States Senate. Okay? Name one. Name one. That is the story in Kentucky. It's the story in America. And guess what? We anticipate 1/3 of farmers over age 65 have not identified who their successor is going to be. There's a phenomenon out there. Fewer people growing up on farms want to continue that family farm. And then vice versa, there's a lot of people from the city and urban areas that have zero farm background who want to become farmers but can't enter the market because they don't have the capital. They don't have the capital to get into it. But in Kentucky, we have a few programs that help us out compared to other states. But we're working with the American Farmland Trust Institute to come up with some original and innovative legal entities so that people can enter into long-term contracts, give people who may not have grown up on a farm an opportunity to rent land, maybe start out small but have the ability to build trust with a farmer to take over that operation one day. We anticipate the largest transfer of land in American history to occur over the next 20 years. The biggest transfer of land since the Homestead Act, since the U.S. government was giving land away, is predicted to happen over the next 20 years as the baby boom population continues to transfer their land to new generations. And that's something that we're very, very concerned about in a state like Kentucky, where we have a lot of farms. We have 76,000 farms in our state, and 95% of those are owned by families. We have a very small corporate ag presence in Kentucky agriculture. And because of that, Kentucky, more than other states, like our friends in the Midwest, we have to be more vigilant when it comes to servicing what not only attracts people to rural Kentucky, but also makes their farm operation more competitive compared to large farm states. A few other things just very quickly I'd like to open up for questions. Kentucky agriculture is unique because we embrace diversity in our ag world. With our average farm size being small. Average farm size in Kentucky is about 160, 165 acres. Acres about the size of a football field. The average farm size on the national level is 460 acres. If you go to the Midwest, if you're a grain farmer, you need to be growing between 2,500 and 5,000 acres if you want to put food on the table. Here in our state, because of tobacco, we have consistently been a small farm state that could put food on the table because the crop consistently was able to pay the bills. And whenever I talk to farm groups, I ask people to raise their hands if you've ever worked in tobacco. We'll do it right now. Raise your hand if you ever worked in tobacco in your life. Now, keep your hand raised if you're working in tobacco in 2017. It's Todd and myself. One other. Three. That shows you how much the Kentucky ag economy has changed in the past 20 years. We used to have over 80,000 tobacco farmers. Now we're down to about 4,500. There's been a mass exodus to the market, and it has forced us to diversify. And because of that, and because of the investments that we've made to the Ag Development Board and Ag Finance Board, which Linda serves on, we're able to reinvest this tobacco settlement money, which other states blew, put it into their general fund, black hole, never to be seen again. Here, we have half of that dedicated towards agriculture, and because of that, we're able to help fund new innovative enterprises, such as industrial hemp, such as CANAF, hops. We have 15 commercial hop growers in Kentucky right now, connecting with our beer industry, which continues to grow. And so we're fortunate in our state where I can honestly say to my counterparts that we grow everything from apples to zucchinis and everything in between, and we do it well. And the Kentucky farmer focuses on high quality value. Because if you grew up on a tobacco farm, you learn about high quality value because you only had so many acreage or pounds to grow. And so you've put a lot of emphasis on high quality. And that's one reason why ag innovation occurs easily in our state. People may not realize this, but Kentucky is a perfect state for ag innovation and research and development. No-till corn, a planting technique that's been replicated around the world, which has reduced the amount of fossil fuels that are needed to grow crops. It has actually increased production and has reduced the amount of pesticides needed to grow commodity crops, was invented in Kentucky. There's a bronze statue of the Young family in Christian County, which helped, along with the UK Extension Service, invent a new way of planting corn that is replicated around the world. A lot of the production practices that were conservation-oriented that got us out of the Great Depression, when Hugh Bennett went out to the panhandle of Oklahoma and said, what are we going to do to repair our soil and repair our environment? A lot of those production practices originate in Kentucky because we've always been having to deal with challenging terrain here. And of course, it was in Kentucky where an unlikely plant was modified to help fight Ebola in West Africa in 2014. That's a Kentucky tobacco plant, which was genetically modified to come up with a vaccine to save lives in West Africa. So when I talk with young people and millennials about an occupation that there's a lot of misperceptions about, but one that has a lot of opportunity, I talk about agriculture. And we actually have venture capitalist firms that are locating in Louisville right now that are specifically targeting ag innovation, ag technology, because they feel that it's been overlooked and there's tremendous potential. And I'll close by saying this. We have a lot of challenges in agriculture. You talk to a farmer, they're going to tell you, they're going to complain because they're really good at it, because there's always something that can be done a little bit better. Even today, I talked with a farmer who said, well, I've had the biggest yields of my life, but I have no place to store it. I was like, well, you have a lot more capacity than you did last year. If you ever meet a farmer that's not complaining about the weather, check their pulse. There's something that can always be better about the weather, but I know we're joking about those few things, but there are some serious challenges. Number one, we're dealing with a population that doesn't know, that has never had to starve before. With the exception of the Great Depression, the United States really have not gone through a period of starvation. You go to Europe, they have different national farm policies because a lot of the folks who form those policies lived through the aftermath of World War II. You go to the Pacific Rim countries that have dealt with massive starvation when Norman Borlaug showed up with short stem wheat and saved 1 billion people's lives and won the 1970 Nobel Peace Prize for it. They have a different perspective towards the importance of agriculture. A lot of us, unfortunately, take low food prices for granted in the United States, and because of that, we don't get the emphasis that we deserve. Secondly, we have a growing world population. We're at 7.3 billion people on the planet right now. We're expected to hit 9 billion by year 2050, and in order to do that, we're going to have to double the amount of food we produce, because increasingly, what we grow in the farm does not go into consumption food-wise. It's being used for fuel and other inputs, and so it's important for us to plan for that. So we have to embrace science, we have to embrace technology in order to meet that challenge. And of course, finally, what I try to do every day with many people in the audience who I recognize is to help give stability and hope for the Kentucky farmer. And we may only constitute 1% of the population, but we fight above our weight class because we bring in close to $6 billion worth of income each year. We have an economic impact of $45.6 billion in our state. On the national level, agriculture is responsible for 1 in 5 jobs. Of all jobs in the United States, it's agriculture. We are responsible for $6.7 trillion worth of our $18 trillion GDP. And so it's important to realize that we are big, that we try to connect. And so if you don't remember anything that I say today, I know you've had a long day, remember these 3 facts for your holiday parties. If you've ever ordered sausage at any Cracker Barrel in the United States, the sausage came from Kentucky. If you've ever have had a biscuit from McDonald's anywhere on the East Coast of the United States, that biscuit came from Kentucky. And the world's largest peanut butter manufacturer, processing plant, is in Lexington, Kentucky, and we don't grow peanuts here. Which goes to show you that if we want to increase economic development, increase jobs, it's not just growing the crops, it's not just raising the livestock, but it's finishing them out into intermediate and final products and focus on value added, which I think is where we really need to spend our investment dollars at so we can get more people back to work and also highlight what many of you already know is the importance of agriculture in our economy. So I'll shut up now. Be happy to take any questions.
Great. And one thing you can also do in the holiday thing is Kentucky bourbon. It's great. It's a growing part of our economy. So with that, wanted to open it up to questions for the commissioner.
Yeah.
Over here. Well, let's start over here. Let me bring this to you.
Commissioner Quarles, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been just an incredible day of conversation. I think you're really the cherry on the top of the sundae of what we're doing. And I want to say first also how much I've enjoyed working with your team and your administration, especially Melanie and Chad in marketing. They've been incredible partners. And you mentioned the commodity breakfast, and I think it really speaks to the crux of what we're dealing with today in our country plans. And I attended the commodity breakfast this year, and it was a wonderful conversation, but if any of you were there, the only Kentucky food on the plate that I knew of was our fruit, vegetables, and maybe the catfish. And I think we're at a moment where we're looking to our leaders across the state, ourselves included, to really walk the talk of celebrating Kentucky agriculture. And the idea of exporting country hams is exciting and inspiring. I think we can look to Europe's work with products of designated origin and terroir. And what will your administration do, or what can we do to ensure that those exporting our cultural and agricultural heritage, and the country ham is one of the most celebrated foods in our state, to make sure it benefits, it comes from Kentucky hogs, and it benefits Kentucky farmers and Kentucky-owned entrepreneurs that are making those hams?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Again, it goes back to telling a story. The consumer increasingly wants to know where their food came from. Sometimes they want to know what sort of animal welfare practices occurred on that farm increasingly. But at the end of the day, Kentucky Proud is meant to promote Kentucky agriculture products. And in our state, it's been a very successful program. And Tim can tell you about that, and Melanie and Chad. But if we continue the path towards a focused effort on international trade, just like the horse deal in China 5 weeks ago, I was glad to sign the deal. But while I had 10 minutes with Ambassador Branstad and Minister Zhur of the People's Republic of China, I talked to them about Kentucky bourbon, Kentucky beef, and Kentucky timber while I was there. And so we're trying to leapfrog and hopefully one door open to another. Internally, we've had a big discussion about the future of Kentucky Proud. We welcome your input of that. When the law was written, it had a very expansive definition of what Kentucky Proud can be, and we're following the law at the Kentucky Department of Agriculture. But there's been a few examples where we want to make sure that we want to make it as Kentucky as possible, but still follow the letter of the law. And that's a discussion that we've struggled with, that we'll continue to have. We welcome your input. But we're a lot better off than other states, as we've got a brand that can be recognized. And one last thought on this. Every May, for 2 minutes, the eyes of the world look on Louisville, Kentucky for the Kentucky Derby. In that 2 minutes, we do the best we can to promote everything agriculture and really tell our story. And there's something that I think we can do. We're the home of many high-quality ag products, but there's a lot of people in America that don't know that. And let me prove my point here. What's Florida known for? What's Idaho known for? Okay, see? Those states have been successful with knowing which state is really good at it. And that's something that I think Kentucky can do a little bit more, because we do have high-quality products beyond bourbon, beyond horses that we can talk about. And I think beef is a great entry point because we're the largest beef cattle state east of Mississippi. And I look forward to seeing what sort of conversations we can have, not just exporting it, but also getting it into our domestic markets in a large way into our grocery stores.
Other questions? Hold on, ma'am.
And while the microphone's being delivered, as Ag Commissioner, I'm obligated to say, make your holiday season a Kentucky Proud holiday season. So be sure to buy and put it on your dinner table.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, okay. I'm with the Lexington Public Library. My name is Jenny Lewis, and we, the library, we've just purchased a Charlie cart, which is a mobile kitchen that we intend to take from branch to branch to teach kind of basic food skills to people. And my question for you is, we have a lot of children and families in Lexington who live in very urban areas who have no experience in farming whatsoever or cooking. So we're coming at it from a very basic level. What are the basics that we need to be working on with kids in the library to teach them about agriculture and about where their food comes from? What's kind of like the baseline that every Kentuckian should know?
Number one, that it comes from a farm. It doesn't come from the grocery store. That's about as basic as you can get. Number two, that agriculture is about science, technology, engineering, and math, the STEM disciplines. And number three is that agriculture isn't only a dominant economic driver for most Kentucky counties, including Lexington, including Louisville, but that it's an area that you can make a career in. We have got to do a better job of developing a pipeline of young people who are inspired to choose agriculture as a career. There's a misperception that ag is about uneducated farmers out in the tractor that have dirt on them all day. And I know that sounds crude, but there is that misperception out there. And increasingly, if you want to be successful in agriculture, you need to be college educated. You have to have a vet background. You have to have an engineering background, an agronomy background, a metrology background to be able to do it right. And by the way, if you're going to market it, you need to have a pretty good game when it comes to marketing as well. Let me help you educate young people. The Kentucky Department of Agriculture has 3 trailers that we drag across Kentucky every year that brings agriculture into the classroom. They're ag science mobile trailers that have been sponsored generously from the Kentucky cattlemen or soybean growers, etc. We can set up with you a curriculum that coincides with the Kentucky curriculum, Department of Education, that helps bring agriculture into your classroom. And you can spend a day with our staff at the Kentucky Department of Agriculture. And we're really good at having age-appropriate curriculum, and we like to bring agriculture to those who may not be exposed to it.
Thank you.
Real quick, number one, Ryan, I want to say thanks for your leadership and prove how hard you work and tell them how far you drove this week.
We've done about 3,000 miles this week. Wasn't all driving, though.
Sticking up there.
Commissioner, thank you. I appreciated the 3 categories that you said the world knows us for. You left out one, and it may be because we don't raise bluegrass anymore, it's raised up north, but we are the bluegrass state. And as far as I know, we are the only state that is named after a grass. And it seems to me that one of the things we should be selling is Kentucky is a grass state or a pasture state. And without getting into corn versus grass, or finishing on grass versus finishing with corn, it seems to me this is a great opportunity, and Kentucky is well positioned to lead with this advantage as the grass state or the pasture state. Is that part of the message?
Well, there are some in the state that want Kentucky to be known for grass. But you bring up a good point. $400 million worth of hay is sold in Kentucky every year. We rank 8th nationally. We have some of the top forages in the United States. The thing is, most of our forages are consumed domestically. Not a whole lot of it is shipped out. There is some that's shipped to other states, but that's one reason why the livestock thrives here. One reason why you can put more head on an acre here than you can out west, that you have the grasses to support it. Forage is one that we've had limited interaction with, but something we'll definitely add to our list. But But we do have some of the best quality forages in the world right here in Kentucky. But the thing is, we have so much livestock and so many racehorses here, a lot of it doesn't have to travel very far to be consumed.
Well, our thing is adding value to our beef and our lamb by promoting the fact that they are pasture raised.
Right, and that can be part of the package when we talk about maybe a lean beef product that's grass-fed. That's something that we can do that other states can't. And I'm telling you, a lot of these companies, I made this point this morning in the meeting, there are a lot of bad regulations out there. There's a lot of anti-agriculture laws that are passed in other states. But if you want to know what changes production practices, it's what consumers demand, what consumers want at the end of the day. And I went through an egg facility last week. 750,000 eggs come out of this one facility down in western Kentucky, Central City, each day. They're cage-free, hormone-free, and the company's doing it not because it's the cheapest production practice, it's because that's what the consumers are willing to pay a premium for. And so I think that adding a lean diet with grass would definitely be part of our story if we wanted to go that route.
You mentioned hemp, industrial hemp. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I'm very familiar with it, but a lot of people here aren't.
Yes, so industrial hemp, Kentucky is one of the largest states when it comes to bringing a crop that connects Kentucky's past to its future back to life. My great-grandfather grew industrial hemp on the banks of the Kentucky River next door in Franklin County because the U.S. government asked them to. And because of the provision in the 2014 Farm Bill, Kentucky was really the first state on the beach when it came to bringing industrial hemp back. We have about 200 growers across the state, 45 processors with brick and mortar locations, making payroll. Some of them are one-person operations. Some of them have a dozen employees or more. And so if we want to talk about hemp real quickly, there's three different derivatives. Well, first off, I'm confident we'll learn how to grow it again. There are some barriers to trade right now. We have complete restriction on pesticides right now that other industrialized countries do not have. We'll work through that with the EPA. But we have a fiber side. Fiber, as you know, can be used for everything from textiles to clothing. There was a house built in Lexington this summer, got a lot of press, that used hempcrete. A lot of people think that the fiber side can be used to replace plastics or other materials. We had a hemp producer, processor, send not just Canap, but also industrial hemp fibers to Tesla this summer to be experimented with the Elon Musk outfit. I have a lot of potential there. You know, Kentucky has about 400 automobile parts suppliers located in our state. And if we can really have a concerted effort to introduce lightweight natural fibers to reduce the weight of cars and increase fuel mileage, Kentucky farmers could potentially be growing car parts in the fields. And that's a conversation we're trying to have. Number two, very quickly, the seed side. A lot of it's being used right now for protein shakes, makeup, a lot on nutrition side. And so there's a lot of interest there. And then finally is the pharmaceutical/nutraceutical side of industrial hemp, primarily derived of a CBD compound. There's about 100 plus compounds found in industrial hemp, particularly the floral part of the plant. CBD is a non-intoxicating, non-hallucinogenic compound in the plant that appears to help positively treat those who suffer from seizures and epilepsies. We are begging universities to do research on this right now. There's a hesitancy for that happening. We are trying to get more involvement from UK and U of L right now, particularly the medical schools, pharmacy schools, to do legitimate clinical trials on this, because we think that this could be a big boon for some of our farmers. And so there's a lot of potential out there, but I also want to let you know that with any innovative product, in any innovative cycle, there's going to be some people who get it right, there's some people who are going to get it wrong, and so failure is part of the innovation cycle. But I think that when we look at industrial hemp 20 or 30 years from now, we're going to view it no different than corn or soybeans. And you got to remember, in the 1960s, soybeans were an experimental crop in the United States and in Kentucky. And so anytime we can bring another alternative crop back to Kentucky as an option for our farmers, that's going to be a win-win situation. But it may not be for everybody.
Other question? Yes, ma'am.
council. You were talking about how a lot of farmers are having to give their land over to younger generations, a lot of them that are from more urban communities and don't have much of a background in agriculture, which made me think about the vocational school in Fayette County, Locust Trace Agri-Science Center. Have you ever visited?
Yes, I need to go back. Finish your question.
Oh, I was just going to
Yeah.
say that, you know, we change a lot. We've grown a lot recently, and we're innovating the school a lot, and I'm a tour guide.
Well, it's been a while since I've been out there, but for those of you who have not visited Locust Trace, it is really, it sets the gold standard when it comes to giving young people an opportunity to look at careers at a very young age that we need. And I even hate using the term vocational.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that has a misperception to it. But I was fortunate to grow up in Georgetown. I see some Scott County folks here. And I know a lot of people, particularly millennials, you know, there's 78 million of us, more millennials in the United States than there were baby boomers at their peak. We've had a tough economy to deal with when it comes to job entry. But my friends who did the vocational route in high school, who went to BCTC in Georgetown, they're halfway to retirement right now at Toyota, and they're the ones that have their houses paid off, and they're the ones that have bass boats sitting in their front yards. And so I really, really am a big proponent of vocational education in Kentucky, because there's 600,000 manufacturing jobs in the United States right now that cannot find workers who either have the necessary skill set or who can pass a drug test right now. It's a very big issue for us.
This will be the last one.
Okay.
Hello, thank you for coming. So I had a few minutes ago to talk about Good Kentucky and Farmers and Food Banks is here. So I need you to talk a little bit about the Hunger Task Force.
Great way, great segment. So as we continue our conversation about connecting with consumers, one thing that I implore upon you to think about is hunger in Kentucky. We are a state that is known for abundance of food. I get to represent an industry that is really good at growing things and raising livestock, but yet 1 in 6 Kentuckians and 1 in 5 Kentucky school children are food insecure, meaning they suffer with hunger at some point in their life, and that's just completely unacceptable. And so we started a conversation 2 years ago with the Department of Agriculture, which is called the Kentucky Hunger Initiative, the first of its kind of effort to bring together everyone involved in the food production system, from the farmers who put seeds in the ground, to our grocery stores, to our charitable community, to our church community, which is already serving a lot of these vulnerable populations, and even to our grocery stores, where 40% of all prepared food is thrown into a trash can each day. And because of that, we've identified a few areas where we've had some successes. Number one, we found out people aren't communicating with each other enough. There's a lot of people involved with anti-hunger relief, but yet sometimes they're duplicating services, and that can always get expensive. Number two, we found out that there's a lack of cold storage in Kentucky. In some instances, these food pantries were given the opportunity to have donations of meat or dairy products, and they had to refuse the donation because they didn't have a safe way to store it. And so we found a financial institution, Farm Credit of Mid-America, CoBank, who donated 156 freezers to our food banks and food pantries across the state. Walmart just gave out about $500,000 of the grants 2 weeks ago, and half of that was earmarked for hunger. We really have some critical mass going into addressing hunger in our state. And perhaps the biggest policy change we had was that we found out that there's some grocery stores in Kentucky that instead of donating perfectly fine, perfectly edible, nutritious food, were throwing it into dumpsters and padlocking it because of fear of lawsuits. There's a chilling effect. And so we said, why are you doing this? They said, well, the law's unclear. And so we decided to do something about it. In this past legislative session, in one of the few instances where a bill got passed unanimously, was changing the food donation law in Kentucky. And now we have the strongest food donation laws in the country in Kentucky. And other states are going to replicate our language next year. And so these grocery stores are no longer throwing this food into a trash can or donating it. And a little provision in that bill also helped out with gleaning opportunities. There's a lot of food that is grown on Kentucky farms that never makes its way to the grocery store. Sometimes it might be too big or too little, or one might be a little bit off color compared to the other. And so a lot of farmers say, I'll donate it, or I'll sell it at a cheap market price. And so the Farms and Food Banks is an opportunity for us to get safe, local, Kentucky-proud food to the hands of those less fortunate. And it also provided legal immunity for farmers to allow volunteers, particularly churches or Bloom, Kentucky, to come on their farm, harvest food that otherwise rot in the field, and put it in the hands that need it. And so we're really starting to have some success with this. We have some wonderful federal programs. Ashton Potter Wright helps out with the Double Dollars program here in Lexington. Kentucky was one of the first states to help leverage and give those less fortunate the opportunity to go to that farmer's market and have the same buying potential that the rest of us have in society. It's a big issue. I'm proud to announce that after about 2 years worth of effort, the rate of food insecurity in Kentucky has decreased by 1% to 16%, which is something to celebrate, but also is a stark reminder of how much further we have to go. So thank you for asking that question. And thank you all for having me today.
Thank you very much. Let's give a big hand.